New Thought Media Network. We are a global broadcast network of positive music, media, and entertainment, inspiring humanity's evolution along the journey of enlightenment and creating a world of love, peace, empowerment, and prosperity for all. New Thought Media Network. Positively inspiring.
Welcome. It's so great to have you here again on Tuesday for Global Focus Today. I am once again Reverend Dr. Sharri Johnson, your host, and I have another marvelous guest. Our guest today is Reverend Karen Linsley. She's an ordained minister with Centers for Spiritual Living, and she's a focus minister, and her ministry is called, sit back, her ministry is called Fearlessly Feral Living. Now, doesn't that pique your interest? She believes that everyone can live successfully, fearlessly, which is free, and feral, which is wild. She facilitates this through her podcasts, her writings, her retreats, and her workshops. In addition, she serves as an interim minister with Centers for Spiritual Living, which is, by my way of thinking, the toughest pulpit ministry there is interim ministry. She lives on a 2.5-acre ranchette in northern Nevada, a half hour away from everything, with her 2 horses, 2 dogs, and a cat. Just call her Moses, because all she needs is an ark and another cat. In her spare time, she enjoys gardening, cooking, rock hounding. I want to know what rock hounding is, and horseback riding. Please welcome Reverend Karen Lindsey of Fearlessly Feral Living. So tell me about rock hounding. What is rock hounding?
Oh, well, first of all, thank you very much for having me, Sharri. And rock hounding is really basically hunting for rocks. So I live in Nevada. We have rocks. Rocks breed in the night in Nevada here. They're here. There's rocks everywhere. And so we have these rock, I call them, they're clubs. So we have rock clubs, but they call themselves usually gem and mineral societies. And we organize rock. We go out to the middle of nowhere in 100-degree plus heat sometimes, with our digging tools, and we just hunt for rocks, and then we bring them back and we polish them up and we cut them and we shine them and we do fun things with them. Yeah, that's so.
Okay. Yeah. Well, now I understand where all those rocks at the flea market come from.
Yeah,
really pretty rocks, and I never, I guess I thought there was a rock factory someplace. So that's good to know. So tell us a little more about Fearlessly Feral Living and how it happened. How did you come into New Thought, and how did being in New Thought get you into Fearlessly Feral Living?
Oh my goodness. Well, that's quite a story. So I came into New Thought during a time in my life when I was experiencing some hardship and some depression, and I knew that I needed to get closer to a God of my understanding. And New Thought was right there for me because my father was a minister with Centers for Spiritual Living way back before they ever called it that. He became a minister when I was 6 years old. No, I'm sorry. He became a practitioner when I was 6 years old. And so I kind of grew up around it and heard, your thoughts are powerful, and, all the catch stuff that we throw around. I heard all that growing up. And so I knew where to go when I needed to do something more and deeper and better in my life. So I started going to my local Center for Spiritual Living, which was at the time in Carson City, Nevada, and started taking classes immediately. I was never interested in church. Didn't like church. Part of it was that I was I was the owner and operator of a very successful photography business, and I was working late Saturday nights photographing weddings. So getting up on Sunday mornings and looking appropriate for church and being awake for church on Sunday mornings just wasn't on my list of things to do. But back then, I didn't like to pray in public. I didn't like to sing in public. I was kind of shut down. I didn't, yeah, it was, but I didn't like the churchy stuff, but I loved the classes. And I started taking classes, and I knew from the first class, I didn't know why. I get these messages, and I never know. A lot of the times I don't know why. I just know I need to honor them. And the message was become a practitioner. And so I did. I became a practitioner, and I was good there because remember, I don't like church. And people, I was good being a practitioner. I set up a teaching chapter in Tahoe where I lived, which was about 40 minutes away from Carson City. And I was good. I had a website. I taught classes. Devoted a room in my studio and set it up as a classroom and did the teaching chapter thing. And life threw some more changes and challenges at me. And meanwhile, there were people poking at me to become a minister. And I didn't want to be a minister. I've never been interested in pulpit ministry. And you mentioned in my intro that you thought interim ministry was one of the most difficult ministry jobs to do. Well, I guess I'm kind of weird because I love interim ministry. I love going into a place where people are a hot mess. I love going into a place where people have had a loss. They're confused, they're angry, they're sad, they're grieving, and they don't know what to do or when to do it. And I can go in and say, I'm here, and support them and hold up a light for them while they do a little bit of digging and they go within and help them grieve and facilitate forgiveness and do all that stuff that just, it gives me the chills just talking about it. And I love that aspect, and give me an opportunity to facilitate someone moving from that sort of angst and dismay and grief into something that's beautiful and more better than anything they could have imagined. That's where I like to shine. And that's kind of how Fearlessly Feral was born, because this was before I became an interim minister. I was thinking about, what do you want to do with your ministry, Karen? They ask you that eternally in ministerial school. What are you going to do with your ministry? And my answer was never pulpit. It was never pulpit. I knew what I didn't want, but I didn't know what I did want. And so it took a while, but I knew I wanted to help people live happily. I wanted to help people live in peace. I wanted to help people be joyous in life. I wanted to let people see that they could live a life with absolutely no limits, none. And so I started there. And then I started thinking of a name, and I wanted Wild and Free Living. That was taken. And it was taken by the oddest place. It was some sort of school for children's school. And they called it Wild and Free Living. And I'm like, why are you taking my name? You can't have my name. Well, they already had it. So I had to come up with a new name. So, the thesaurus sometimes is my best friend. And I just started looking up equivalents, and Fearlessly Feral fit me. It fits. Fits my lifestyle. It fits me. It fits who and what I am. I am a bit wild.
Well, what amuses me is that I think it's the ideal name for an interim minister.
It is.
You go into, as you said it, a hot mess. You clean the mess. You pick up your broom and your bucket, and you leave.
Yeah, and then I go.
Takes over. That seems to me, like you do all the hard work, and then you go away and let somebody else have the easy part. And it just amazes me. I am in awe of your spirit and your.
Well, thank you. Thanks. Yeah, I love interministry and, the Fearlessly Feral Living thing. I love doing podcasting. I love writing. And so I do a blog. Honestly, there's no set schedule with my podcast or my blog. Remember, I'm wild. So I do a blog when I damn well feel like it. I do a podcast when I feel like it. At any given moment, I've got 2 or 3 podcasts in the works at some point. I get the ideas, I jot down the ideas, I come back, I flush them out, I come back, I write the whole thing, I let it sit in the soup for a while, I come back, I edit, and then I'm ready to record. So I've got several podcasts in the works. There's a couple that are actually ready to record right now, and I'll record them when I feel like it.
I taught college for 35 years. I'm so regimented that I can't live without my calendar.
Yeah.
Tuesday is global focus today. Wednesday is meditation. Thursday is, every day's got its own name on it. I don't think I could be fearlessly feral. I think I'm pretty fearless, but I'm not sure I could be feral.
Well, I don't know you really well, Sharri, but I think you have some feral in you. I really do. You had that retreat center out 2 hours away from everything.
Yep, 2 hours from everything, Arkansas. That's where I was for 4.5 years.
2 hours. 2 hours from everything, Arkansas. And I always wanted to go and visit that retreat center, but Arkansas is a long ways away from me. So
Arkansas is a long ways away from everything.
Yeah, 2 hours from everything. Yeah.
So how did you get from podcasts and writing and blogs to interim ministry? Those are, I can see how the skills of fearlessly feral living would adapt very well to interim ministry, but what made you walk through that door?
Oh, well, it's a two-parter. When I was trying to decide what I wanted to do with my ministry, fearlessly feral was one piece, interim ministry was the other piece. And I really wanted to be an interim minister. And I had my struggles with that. I applied for the job and got turned down at first. And I was told I didn't have enough experience. And I'm like, how the hell am I supposed to get experience if I can't get a job? I don't know how this works.
Been there.
I went to the school. I bought the books. I didn't need the books. I studied them. I got good grades. And I feel like I'm qualified to do this job. Fast forward a couple years, all the personnel changed, and they changed the rules, and they offered a training for interim ministry, and I jumped on it. I think I was in one of the first trainings they offered, and I said, I still want to do interim ministry. It's perfect for me. It's absolutely perfect. It hits me on all levels. And so I took the training, and during the training, I was asked, I was told there was an interim ministry opportunity coming up. Did I want it? And, I was, yeah, of course I wanted it. Of course I wanted it. And I was off and running after that.
Great. That's right. I expect that you are setting an example that will be difficult to match. And the challenge, I think, with beginning your ministry as an interim minister is that the stereotype is that an interim minister is a pulpit minister who burned out. After 2 or 3 pulpits, decided I don't want to do full-time pulpit. I'll do so. When they said you didn't have enough experience, they meant you hadn't burned out yet.
Oh, I've never heard that. And, I'm thinking about my team, my fellow interim ministers. None of them fits that description. None of them.
That's the old model. It really is. And I'm delighted that they actually offered a training for interim ministers because they didn't used to do that.
And they still do. And they keep revising and tweaking that training. Try and say that fast. They keep revising it and improving it and making it better. And they're now recommending it for all ministers, not just people who want to be interim ministers. There's some really good, yummy stuff in that training. And it's awesome. And, my fellow interim ministers, we meet once a month and talk, and none of them fits that profile. We are all loving, we have our challenges, of course, in interim ministry, but we are loving our jobs. And, I've never gone out and asked any of them if they would be interested in a full-time permanent pulpit, but all of us are on it. We're enthusiastic and excited about our jobs.
So you just gave me a great segue. What's the biggest challenge in being an interim minister?
When people at the community we're serving don't want to do the work. It's when they don't want to do the work. Things happen to us in life, and it is perfectly normal and natural, I think, for us to say, grieving is a very private process and I don't want to do anything with it. And I'm just going to move on with my life and go here and do that. And that's okay. But long term, that doesn't work so well because things tend to get stuck inside when we do that. So, they have felt when a community loses their minister, the loss is profound. And it's big and it's huge. And if people don't settle in with that uncomfortableness of uncertainty, and if they don't settle in with the unpleasant feelings for a little while and just process them and work through them instead of around them, there's going to be trouble down the line. And so, my biggest challenge with the job is when folks don't want to do the work. And so I do my best at facilitating the willingness to do the work.
So I'm thinking there are two ways that happens. One of them is that the minister who's been there forever makes it their transition. Mm-hmm. And the other is the minister who's been there for some period of time gets a better offer. Which one is a harder one to walk into?
Well, for me, actually, that's not totally accurate. Usually when I go into a community, it's either because they've made their transition or because they've retired.
Oh, well, retired is sort of getting a better offer.
Oh, yeah, that's true. So the transition piece is probably the more difficult because the event, if they've had a long illness, the events leading up to the transition tend to throw a community into a tizzy. And if it's a sudden thing and they're like gone with very little notice, that carries with it a whole nother set of issues. People are in shock. And when they get in shock, they go into flight or fight. And some of them are fighting and some of them are flying, and they're like, and that's what I come into. Yeah.
So what I'm curious about, and this is just me being nosy, because I don't want your job. You pay me enough to take your job. Because I come from a big family anyway, But what I'm wondering is, how do you interact with, what part do you play in the search for the new minister who's going to come in after you've cleaned up the mess?
I don't play any part in the search at all.
Ah.
The interim minister has nothing to do with the search. That's a totally separate thing, and the members of the community set up their own search committee, which is totally separate from me, and I'm not even allowed in their meetings.
Oh, that's wonderful.
And they work with home office, and the interim minister, we got other things to do. We've got other things to do. The search is something totally separate. And the community participates, and they're encouraged to do so. They participate fully and completely in that process.
That's wonderful. And so what's the most uplifting, rewarding, wonderful part of being an interim minister?
Oh my. Well, when I'm approaching the end of my time with them and I'm seeing cohesiveness and I'm seeing a united community and I'm seeing excitement and enthusiasm and I'm seeing a can-do attitude instead of I can't do that. I'm seeing all that good, positive, yummy stuff. And I am seeing, the search is progressing, and we might even have a couple candidates in the wings waiting to come and interview and do their candidates weekend and speak and do all the stuff they do. And when I get to see that and feel that energy, that's really, really wonderful.
Oh,
That's really wonderful.
so when you're not doing interim ministry and you are doing Fearlessly Feral Living,
Uh-huh.
how do you decide what you want to do? Because you said you do it when you feel like doing it, when you want to do it. So how do you decide what you're going to do and when you're going to do it?
Well, I get up in the morning and I have some daily readings. I might have a couple of others that I read. Actually, I have like a dozen others that I read. Not all every single day, but I pick and choose. And I sit there and I think a little bit and I stare out the window and I meditate, and something, I'll get clarity. And sometimes I'll sit down to write, and, there's certain parameters. So if I'm writing something, like let's say I'm writing about willingness to change, just throwing out a topic.
Mhm.
Well, that can be a pretty big topic. But if I'm writing it for a social media post, it's got to be fairly short or I'm going to lose people. So I'll write, and when it's complete, I'll look at the length of it. If it's fairly short, up it goes on social media. If it's longer, up it goes on my blog. And if it's coming out to where it's really long, like 20-minute talk kind of long, which is how long my podcast episodes are approximately, then it becomes a podcast. And then that's the point where I start fleshing it out even more, and like finding some quotes to go with it and doing a little research on statistics if I need to, or whatever I need to do to flesh that thing out. And then when it's ready and it's polished and I'm comfortable with it, then I record it and up it goes to a podcast.
Wow. So
it's, I literally go with the flow with this thing. And I've never been, I think that's why I've been self-employed for most of my adult life. I've never, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, never worked for me. Oh, Sharri, the times I've tried that, I got a twitch in my eye, a muscle spasm in my back, and high blood pressure. Those kinds of jobs do not work for me. I love the uncertainty. I love the flexibility. Because for me, when I live in uncertainty, that means I'm open to whatever wants to come in. And so if I'm not saying, okay, I got to publish this podcast to tomorrow at noon, if I'm not saying that kind of stuff, I'm open to what wants to come in. And then it comes in and I'm like, oh, where did that come from? Well, that's a cool idea. Okay, let's flesh this one out. Yeah.
Cool. Okay, so now I want to go back to that rockhound thing, because it occurred to me that you might have some really good rockhound stories about finds that you have made or discoveries that you have made. So what's the most fun thing that ever happened when you were hounding rocks?
Well, I'm a beginner, so I haven't been out that much. Honestly, I really like going to the monthly meetings. These meetings crack me up, Sharri, because they're way out further than where I live. They're in this little valley called Mason, which is 2 valleys over from me. So it's called the Mason Valley Gem and Mineral Society. And I go, and the meetings are held at the Veterans of Foreign Wars meeting hall. So it's got that energy and that atmosphere to it. Everything is held there. And so we meet there, and there's a lot of what I call desert hermits come to this meeting. If Nevada has a lot of people that live out in the desert. They're off grid. They have their own, they live off solar. They're not hooked up to Nevada Energy. They're not hooked up to the power. They have their own well for water. They're truly off grid living, and I call them Nevada hermits. And Lord knows what they do. I mean, if you drive across the state of Nevada, you'll see these little trailers out there in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere, and these people living out there. And so a lot of these folks come to our meetings, and we talk about where we're going to go on the next rock hounding trip. And my most favorite part is everybody brings some rocks in, and we have a little raffle at the end of the meeting. And you get to choose your rock. And then once a year, we have an auction, and we donate the money to, well, we use a lot of the money to pay for our insurance and things like that, but we also donate some to various organizations. And it's just really wonderful. And to see some of the things these people make with these rocks is absolutely beautiful. If I had known you were asking, I would have brought some samples in. But yeah, it's gorgeous. So the last rock hounding trip I went on was a spur of the moment thing. I couldn't make the official one, mostly because it was too hot. It was like 115 degrees out. I don't do well with that kind of temperature. I'm 68 years old. I don't do heat very well. And
when I was 10, I didn't do that kind of heat.
Yeah, yeah. Even though it's a dry heat, yeah, well, it's still hot. But the guy who organizes the rock hounding trips wanted to go on this trip, and I can't remember the name of the place, but I wrangled myself a personal and private invitation to go with him. And so I met him at this place, and he had his little quad off-road four-wheeler little thing. These little quads, they go really fast. So we're out in the middle of the desert, out in the middle of nowhere on a dirt road, hauling ass down the dirt road. And it's just, there's nothing out there, and it's beautiful. And we have, because of the wet winter, we had the wildflowers were growing and the weather was pleasant. And, you know, rock hounding brings with it, other people have the same kind of thing happen when they're hiking, or when they're rock climbing, or when they're climbing in caves. You know, it's all kinds of stuff. So we're out there in the middle of nowhere, and we pull up to this place, and he says, up there at the top of the hill, that's where I'm going. And he parked it, and off he scampers up the hill like a little billy goat. And I looked at this hill, and I looked at the temperature, and I went, I'm not going up that hill. And so I kind of stayed down, and I found some wonderful pieces. And they're in my polisher now. So when you polish rocks, you put them in.
You have your own rock polisher?
I do, yeah. That's all I've got, though. I can't cut them. I can't do any of the other cool things that people do with them, but I do have a polisher. You put your rocks in this little polisher, and you put sand in it and water. And it's the same effect as the waves of the ocean have on rocks on the beach. If you've ever noticed on a beach, rocks get really smooth, it's the same effect.
How?
So it takes a good couple months to polish up a batch of rocks. And you just leave it around.
Let it run for a couple of months?
Say that again?
I say you just turn it on and let it run for a couple of months?
Yeah, I mean, you check it periodically and make sure it doesn't need water or sand. But yeah, and there's nothing going on in there that shouldn't be. But well, it could be all, so here's another thing I learned about rock hounding. God. So rocks have different hardness levels.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put a rock in there with a soft hardness level and a rock in there with a hard hardness level, the soft rock's going to get dissolved. So you got to make sure that you put rocks of the similar hardness levels in the rock tumbler so that they don't destroy the softer ones.
Well, you have just officially made this not a wasted day, because I learned something.
Yeah.
Whenever I talk about this program, I always tell people you should come, because I have never failed to learn something.
Yeah.
Every single guest knows something I don't know and tells me about it.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So someday when I'm coming to Nevada, I want to go find out about rock. I want to come and try rock.
Nevada, Sharri, you can come and stay at my house on my little round shed. I got a guest bedroom, and we'll go rock hounding. Outstanding.
Outstanding. So there are 4 questions that I ask all of my guests.
Okay.
No, there are 5. I keep forgetting the fifth one is the first one. And that is there anything that you want to talk about, fearlessly feral living, interim ministry, anything that's happening in your life that I haven't asked you about?
Well, fearlessly feral living for me is really high up in importance of who I be and how I show up in the world. And, I was talking with a friend this morning on the phone, and he asked me, what does spirituality mean to you?
That's a
And
nice.
it's a nice question, isn't it? And I said, it's a lifestyle for me. And it's part of who I am. And it means that, for me, there's a huge spiritual psychology component, and there's a huge connection component, because the big thing, the stuff that is the God of my understanding, is not out there separate from me. It is within me. It's a part of me. It is as me. And so my job is to connect with it as best I can. And so every single day is filled with activities that facilitate a better connection within me, whether that be meditation or journaling or staring out the window at the birds or riding my horse or whatever it is. And Fearlessly Feral Living is about allowing people to, and facilitating, and not teaching them what to think, but teaching them how to think, so that they too can live fearlessly feral, happy, joyous, and free. That's my goal for every single person on this planet. And Pollyanna here, I believe it can happen.
Oh, that's you. I can tell you're a writer because you set up such wonderful segues. Because here's my next question.
Okay.
Does Fearlessly Feral Living, or interim ministry the way you do it, which is Fearlessly Feral, how does that establish, encourage, develop, pick your own verb, conscious evolution?
Oh my.
That's what most people start with.
Oh my. So where I went first with that is that this piece of inner self-awareness is where it begins. Because if God is within us and a part of us, the only way that we can connect with that thing that is, that stuff that Ernest Holmes calls it, the only way we can connect with it is by going within. I really believe that when it says to thine own self be true, it's talking about us knowing not just our superficial selves, like I don't like coffee without cream in it or whatever. Not that. The deeper stuff, knowing who and what we are and how we want to show up in the world and honoring that. And so, and that takes some inner exploration that we are not traditionally taught to do. And so the first step in Fearlessly Feral Living, for me anyway, is we're going inward. We're going on an inner journey. And I don't care if you think the mind is a dangerous neighborhood. I'm there with you. We're going there. Because it's the only way. It's the only way to live happily, is to first go within.
Okay, I'll take that. All right, here's the next one. It sounds like the same question, but it's different.
Okay.
How does Fearlessly Feral Living, or interim ministry the way you do it, which is Fearlessly Feral, how does it encourage, develop, expose, unveil, pick your own verb, world peace?
Oh my. Yeah, that is way different. So I always advocate beginning within, because that's the only place we can begin. And then we go through a process and we get to a place where we have clarity, we have peace, we have joy, we have an enthusiasm for living that we did not have before. And then we are well prepared to move outward into the world and do what is ours to do. And, sometimes that takes a little while, but for me, I know what is mine to do out there in the world. And I know this because I did a process to get that clarity. Yeah, I went within first.
Okay, here's the toughest one.
Okay.
Close your eyes for this one.
Close my eyes. Okay.
So 10 years from now, provided that every single thing goes exactly the way you think it should go, every little detail, every experience, every person, every activity turns out exactly the way you want it to go, What does fearlessly feral living look like?
Oh my. Well, I'm still going to be doing something with ministry. I don't know if it'll be podcasting because technologically, who knows what's going to come up. But I'm going to be doing something with ministry. But I'll be 78 years old. So there's that. There's that piece.
Try not to make that sound so loud, so old. I'm 73.
Okay. And I want to be like you when I grow up. Okay. That's what I want to be doing in 10 years. I want to be like you when I grow up. So, where my thoughts went, okay, I'm going to have a beautiful, wonderful partner in life that shares this thing with me. I'm going to be able to ride my horse and go cantering down my trail. I'm going to be able to have my garden. I'm going to be able to travel. And I'm going to continue sharing the message of living successfully in whatever technological way that shows up in the world. I suspect there's going to be a lot more writing in that picture. I have 2 books published. I've been working on a 3rd one for years now. Who knows when I'll get done with it? Because I only work on it when I feel like it. So we'll see.
Okay. So here's the last question.
Okay.
Will you come back?
I would love to.
Okay. Now, I don't let people get away. The first opening I have is the 25th of June next year. Will you take it?
Oh my God. Oh, sure.
I'll send you a reminder.
June. Well, I got to put it in here though. Otherwise it's going to get filled up. So what's the date again?
The 25th of June.
Okay. Same bat time, same bat channel.
Same bat time, same bat channel.
I'm going to put Reverend Sharri show. Yeah.
That'll work.
You're in there.
Okay, in mine too. And thank you so much for coming today and giving us such a great interview. I do want to let everybody know that our guest this has never happened before. Our guest next week is also named Karen, Reverend Karen Cleveland from One Love Animal Connection. So be sure to come back. It'll be new and different and exciting, and we're guaranteed to learn something. And for now, bye-bye.
Bye, everybody. Thank you so much.
Please help us say thank you to our organizational sponsors and donors, including the Hefferland Foundation, Affiliated New Thought Network, International New Thought Alliance, Science of Mind Archives and Library Foundation, Center for Spiritual Living Denver, Center for Spiritual Living Midtown Atlanta, New Thought Philadelphia, Planned Happiness Institute, Summit Center for Spiritual Living, Center for Spiritual Living on the Lake, Unity Spiritual Center Kitchener, Om Center for Spiritual Living, Satya Center, Center for Spiritual Living North Jersey, Unity of Savannah, Center for Spiritual Living Seattle, and all of our individual donors and sponsors. Thank you for being a part of the New Thought Media Network. Please come be you.
Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things. Amazing, amazing, you will do amazing things.